Shwmae a chroeso I Sgwrs, podlediad Consortiwm Canolbarth y De. Yn y podlediad hwn byddwch chi'n clywed y trafodaethau diweddara am bob math o bethau addysg. Hello and welcome to Sgwrs, the Central South Consortium podcast. In this podcast we'll bring you the very latest discussions on all things education.
Croeso and welcome to this discussion about NQT mentoring. I'm delighted to welcome Amy Walters Bresner, who is the Induction Mentor at Whitmore High School in Barry. And I'm also really grateful to one of her NQTs, Ben, for joining us for this conversation. So, Ben, I'm going to start with you. I'd love to just get a sense of how your NQT year is going so far. I don't know whether you can pick out just maybe a couple of highlights from the year so far.
I think there's been a few things that I would point to. I think as I've sort of established myself in the school, I think I've become a bit of a fixture for the kids, where a lot of pupils are sort of seeing me in the corridors. I've developed some really good relationships with some of the kids, and that's sort of translating across the school. One thing that sort of sticks with me was a duty that I'd done on one of the corridors, and I'd never met the student before. Went up to him, said good afternoon, so we sort of chatting, and she said, "What's your name?" So I said, "Oh, my name's Mr. Yarrow, good to meet you." And she said, "Oh, right, you're Mr. Yarrow. You're not who I expected you to be." I went, "Why is that?" She said, "Oh, people talk about you." And I was thinking, I obviously hesitantly, I sort of said, "Right." I said, "All good things, I hope." And she said, No, yeah, they do. They said you're really nice, but you're also really strict." And I was like, okay. So I was like sort of in between sort of places, but I think it wasn't necessarily a negative comment. It wasn't a good comment. I kind of liked how she phrased it, which was nice. I think then professionally, something that sticks with me is being able to sort of design with a scheme of learning with my head of department. So I had the pleasure of sort of doing that for a year 9 sort of scheme of learning. So that's just been put into place. So booklets, presentations, sort of curriculum maps was all part of that, and that stuck with me as well as a really sort of positive thing to happen so early in my career, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, the first point is about those relationships, and we all know that is just absolutely key, isn't it? So if you're able to be building those positive relationships already in your first year, that sounds fantastic. And your second example there is just about sort of that longer term planning, which you don't always necessarily get to do on your PGCE year. So it's lovely that you're starting to feel like, you're making an impact, within your department and more widely, and bringing some of your ideas in. So fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of challenges, what would you say have been the biggest challenges so far?
I think, we as teachers, we sort of face challenges daily, don't we? But I think it's a case of how we sort of manage them. I think one thing that it's not a flaw of the PGCE program at all, but one thing that I don't think you can ever really be ready for is the demand of being a full-time teacher. So going from, a timetable where you might have 4 lessons scheduled during your second placement, that suddenly becomes regular, and you're doing that day in, day out, ensuring that, your adaptive teaching processes are in place and those sorts of things. I don't think you can really ever prepare for that. It's something that sort of happens, and then you're having to adapt to that as you move in. So that was probably the biggest challenge I found in September, I think. But my department, because I'm across 3, my departments have been great, and I've had really good support, so it wasn't that much of a challenge for me.
Brilliant. And that is such a common thing that I hear lots of NQTs talking about, that big jump from a part of a timetable and then suddenly into a full timetable, and possibly being a form tutor and all the other things that go alongside it as well. So I'm going to bring your mentor in now, Amy. It's lovely that you've come to talk to me this afternoon about your experience as Induction Mentor. And you are really experienced as a mentor now, so I'd love to hear from you about what you believe makes mentoring really effective for NQTs.
I think for me, mentoring is one of the best jobs in the whole world, and I absolutely love it. But I think what is effective is when you have absolute clarity of what mentoring is. And I think unless you understand what mentoring is, then it's a job that can be quite challenging. And for me, mentoring is when you stand by that person's side, when you're with them and you actually help them through what the problem might be. And you do give them clarity of understanding where you are talking through those issues, where you are helping them through. And you do need to coach as well as mentor and be able to walk through a problem with them and be able to walk through an issue with them when they need it. And I think it's really important that as a mentor, you are not afraid to challenge as well as support. And I think sometimes when you are working with NQTs, a lot of people think that they have to support and not challenge. And I think that it is important that as a mentor, you are there to, especially when you're working with somebody such as Ben. Ben's excellent and he's a really, really good NQT, that I do challenge him and that I do push him out of his comfort zone, and that I am prodding him a little bit and sort of, challenge him to be the very best version of himself. And I think that mentoring has got its place, and that you do, as I said, swap into coaching when you need to as well, and that you do understand that you're always referring back to those standards, that you're always looking at the standards and pushing and challenge as much as possible, I think, really.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think having real clarity about the difference between mentoring and coaching is so important. And, all NQTs are different, aren't they?
Yes,
so it's about
definitely.
knowing when to shift
Yeah.
your approach from one to the other.
Yeah, definitely. I think not being afraid when to coach and when to mentor. And I think one of my greatest strengths, and if you like, is I love coaching and I sit quite happily in coaching. But I think that because I think when you coach, you empower, and that's really important, especially when someone is straight out of NQT, straight out of PGCE, they've got such a lot to learn, and you can't necessarily teach them everything. They have to learn for themselves, but then you have to mentor, because equally they've got such a lot to learn. Sometimes you do need to give those answers straight away, but then equally you've got to stand by their side sometimes and say, no, you've got to find that answer for yourself as well, because it is all about empowering. And I think as an induction mentor, you've got to be really skilled when to know when to coach and when to know when to mentor. And I think that is quite a skill to have, I think, at times.
Absolutely. And as you've sort of got more experienced over the years, do you think your approach to your role as induction mentor has changed at all?
Yeah, I'm far more challenging than I've ever been. I think before I used to give the answers. I used to step in and be like, no, this is what you need to do. Come on, you've got to do it. Do it this way, do that way. And I think you're far more coloured by your own experience, and you're far more readily just, just give the answer, get on with it. It's easier. Whereas now I'm like, no, you've got to find the answer for yourself. I'm actually going to be a bit stubborn here, and I'm going to wait for you to answer this, because I know the benefit of somebody finding the answer themselves is far more powerful, because that is going to be a lived experience for them that's going to take them through their career and sit with them far more than me giving them the answer. And that lived experience is going to be far, far, far more powerful than me giving them the answer. So I try to sit more in coaching than I do in mentoring than I've ever done before, but I'm not afraid to sweep into mentoring when I need to, because also I understand that you need to mentor when you need to.
Yeah, no, really interesting. I know that definitely part of your mentoring strategy, particularly this year, has been something called live coaching. So I'm really, really interested for you to tell me, what is live coaching?
So live coaching is, we've got a coaching program here at Pencoedtre where I go into classes all of the time, and we normally just go in, we look around in the class, and then we give email feedback. However, live coaching is when we go in, and if I see something that a teacher can act on straight away, or an NQT can act on straight away, I'll go up to that teacher and I'll go up to them and I say, right, I think you need to implement whatever it is straight away. So for example, if I were to go up to Ben, and I've done it before, haven't I, Ben? And I've said to you, right, you need to go to that pupil and you need to challenge them because they're not on task. Or I'll go up to him and I say, right, you need to get out from behind that desk. You're not standing behind that desk. Get out and teach at the back. And then I'll move away, and then subtly Ben will then go and do what I've asked him to do. And that's what it is. It's live coaching in that moment right there. And that teacher goes and impacts on that piece, acts on that piece of advice. And that feedback is there. It's done. And it's such a powerful moment because the teacher has that that feedback, they act on it, and it's just brilliant to see, and it's really impactful.
So, I mean, you've sort of answered my next question, really. I was going to say, you know, why do you believe it's an important part of your approach, and why do you think it works? Is there anything else you want to sort of add to that?
Yeah, I think, you know, traditionally, you know, you do feedback, don't you, after a lesson observation of an hour, or sometimes you can't even do that because you've got to go to break duty, or you've got a class straight after. And I think the impact of that feedback is gone. And also, that's it. It doesn't happen. Whereas if you're in the moment and you're feeding back straight away, that lived experience makes an impact. And I think that's why it's so fantastic and really empowering for both the teacher and the mentor, because you can see that feedback's impacted on that person, and that person feels like, oh my gosh, I've made a difference, or I'm going to do that again. I'm going to teach from a different corner. I see why it's important that I act on that feedback. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that we've implemented in Pencoedtre, and it's had a massive impact whole school, but certainly as in NQTs, the progress the NQTs have made from live coaching has been phenomenal this year.
Oh, really interesting to hear about. Ben, I want to bring you back in then at this point to sort of, you know, give us your experience of live coaching and sort of, you know, how it's benefited you.
Yeah. So I think coming off the back of a PGCE program where everything is sort of watched, and there is, I think in my experience of my PGCE year, I had feedback after every lesson, and obviously that the detail of that varied, but I found that like a lot of the feedback I would get was formalized, and I think it's very much focused towards the teaching standards. My experience of live coaching is more about, you know, how to be a teacher, how to be a professional, how to improve your practice. And I think not that they're sort of minor in any way to sort of discredit them, that not at all, but it's feedback in the classroom that, like Amy said, is powerful and is impactful. There are things that happen straight away where, you know, Amy and I have talked about how sometimes when I'm teaching my lessons, I get happy feet. So I get so enthusiastic about a topic where I like to pace and I end up moving. But what that then creates for my learners is the target is moving. So I'm 6'6", so to have that presence moving is like, right, what is he saying? Where's he going? And it is really powerful, and it's not something I ever really considered. So we've talked about having like certain places in the classroom where I'll teach from, and that's been massive, because I think it's such a staple where you might go and stand in a certain place and you teach from there, and then you get comfortable. But then going and standing in the classroom, standing in certain areas where you can challenge low level disruption is such an easy and quick sort of strategy to have. And I wouldn't have had that without live coaching.
Yeah.
It's because I'm not necessarily having that level of support, I guess. Of course I have formalized observations, but they're planned to the nth degree. I know 2 minutes into my lesson I'm going to go and stand here, and we're going to embed this. But the live coaching thing is much more impactful. Amy talked about sports coaching and how that's implemented. I see parallels between sports coaching and how we teach as practitioners, where struggle time is something that is there. Yeah, we allow the kids to sort of try and figure out for themselves. It's exactly the same for teachers, but instead of writing something down, we're teaching and doing something that's a bit more interactive. But I think I don't think it could ever sort of be seen as something that's not best practice.
Yeah, can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
It's because we had that conversation in the class, didn't I? I came up to you and I said, stand still, because you're moving. And you went, oh yeah, okay, then I'll stand still. And you did. And I walked past and I went back to the back of the class, and I came back up to you and I said, how did you feel? And I said, and you said, oh my gosh, it made a difference. But if I hadn't told you in that moment and you hadn't stopped and had that feeling, then it wouldn't have made a difference if I told you after. But it was actually having that feeling and that impact there and then. And you've done it ever since.
It made. I almost sort of get the sense that you're able to look at the lesson, Amy, from the pupil's perspective, so then you can be telling the NQT things to change or adapt, because you're able to sort of see how they're experiencing the lesson.
I suppose it's more like that than the formal point of view. So I suppose you come in from that point of view, and it's pointing things out, because it's not a formal observation, more of a coaching observation. Yes, I am looking at standards, of course I am, and yes, I am looking to make sure they're hitting everything that we need to be hitting, from our lesson standards point of view. But yes, I suppose I do come in and it's more sharp in focus, and then I go. So we don't stay very long when it's live coaching. I'm in there maximum 5 minutes, and that's it. I'm back. I'm out.
That's what I was going to go on to ask you, really, in terms of the actual mechanics of it. So you've just said it's 5-10 minutes, and so it's never really longer than that, is it?
No, but then you get seen maybe twice a week, so it's really constant, isn't it? And it's just it's constant drip feed, if you like. So the impact is so strong because we're constantly popping in and we're constantly reaffirming. Sharp. And what is good as well is that I'll come back in, and if I see Ben doing what I've just said, I'll live praise then, if you like. I'll come out and I say, that's amazing, superb, and that praise goes a long way, because a praise is so lovely. How often do we actually get to praise people face to face? And that's fantastic. So live coaching and live praise does make a difference as well.
And so if it's really regular, do you give them warning? Do they know that you're coming in? Is it planned, or that you could just come into any lesson at any point and they know that?
It's a whole school thing. So we have coaching whole school. So we pop in 2 or 3 times a week, and there's 3 coaches who could be seen, twice a day by different people. It's a whole school thing. But as NQTs, it's supportive as well, to make sure that they're okay. It's well-being as well as obviously coaching as well.
So Ben, how does it feel from your perspective, sort of, thinking that someone might just pop into the lesson?
Originally, it made me nervous, because I thought, sort of standing on eggshells, and I think maybe established teachers might also be almost offensive. But I think what's happened in Pencoedtre is we've had this sort of collective change in ethos where everyone's sort of buying in, and it's sort of like, let's get better together. So it's not necessarily viewed as something that's like negative. It's always positive, and it's actually seen as like probably one of our shining lights, I guess. The coaches are all established, experienced, really good teachers who you could always ask anything of, and you'll get a supportive answer straight away. And I don't think anyone in the school would say anything different. So yeah, I'm not sure.
And I guess if this is part of a whole school culture, then it's not something that's being done to the NQTs. That if everyone knows that this is what happens in the school, then, and everyone's buying into that, then it's just part of what all teachers are getting access to, I suppose, and entitled to feedback.
But I always make sure I pop on the NQTs. They're always on first on our list to make sure that they're looked after.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, it's interesting. I wrote a document last summer about different types of support that mentors might give, in terms of, obviously the formal lesson observations, but then learning walks, maybe, even team teaching. And one of the things in that sort of menu was something called the pit stop model, which was introduced by Swansea University. And there's lots of parallels really with the live coaching, but the pit stop model is just a bit more sort of structured and formal, I think. So it's just interesting that the live coaching seems to be a lot more sort of organic and flexible, which I think sounds like it might possibly work well, because you've got that flexibility. I think it's not so rigid.
I think there is a real synergy between the two. So you've got this sort of like formalized, especially from an NQT point of view. So you've got this sort of like formalized structure where we're going to be observed 3 times a year, and that's focused very much on our professional development as teachers. But the coaching program is more of a case of embedding best practice. So it's almost like an enrichment sort of thing that it is beneficial in that way. It's I can't speak for my colleagues, established teachers, but I think it's very different to performance management. They're not the same thing. So coaching program sits totally separate to anything that's like formalized. And I think that's its biggest strength. It's not threatening, it's low stakes sort of thing, but the rewards are really high.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. From what you've described, I think it is quite important that those systems are separate. Would you agree, Amy?
Oh, completely. It's non-threatening. There's no threat at all in it, and the coaching is is conducted by different people as well. We don't sit anywhere near the Q&A process at all, and we're not involved with the Q&A process, and it's constantly popping in, and it's always really positive feedback. And that's the idea, that the coaching is there to support and challenge teachers, challenge those excellent teachers to be even better versions of themselves, and to support those teachers that need support, to ensure everybody is embedding the best possible practice for teaching and learning.
Yeah, no, it sounds so fascinating. Amy, just sort of a final question. If mentors listening to this sort of are interested in this approach, what would your advice be to them?
I think it's really important that you understand the differences between mentoring and coaching, and understand those roles. So go out there, get some research, do some reading, and attend some training courses, because done badly, mentoring and coaching can actually do more harm than good. And I think it's really important that you understand the differences between those two in your roles.
And would you say that part of its success has been because it has been a whole school thing, or do you think that there could be an induction mentor in a school that could do this with their NQT, even if it wasn't part of a bigger whole school thing?
I think you could definitely do it on your own, the live coaching, 100%. If that's what you want to do, you could pop in, no problem at all. If that's something that you want to do, I think it makes a huge difference. And to be honest, if this wasn't a whole school thing, I would still do it anyway for my NQTs, because I know, hand on heart, the difference it makes when you're constantly popping and giving that drip feed all the time, because it's just the constant praise, if anything. Say, well done, the excellent, have you tried? That's what makes a difference, and that's what shifts teaching and learning and shifts performance, not one-off feedback. That doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I really like that it's it's actually praising and wanting to find where there are strengths and good things going on, as well as the things that you're sort of aiming for them to make progress on and improve.
Yeah.
Ben, was it important to you to have all of this explained really clearly at the start of the year, so that you knew what to expect and how Amy was going to do this live coaching?
No, not really. Because I worked with Amy at the back end of last year, we'd already had a relationship, and I trusted Amy's experiences, so I didn't necessarily feel like I had to have something laid out to me, although it was. I didn't necessarily have to have, I wasn't questioning, well, why are you coming in for 3 weeks on a coaching program? How is this different to all of that stuff was sort of okay. I was just sort of trusting the process. I was more focused on ensuring that I was in the best place to start my career. So that sort of stuff, I sort of just trusted. Amy's my mentor, she'll sort that, and it'll be beneficial to me. But yeah, I don't think I would ever sort of challenge anything anyway.
Amy, from your perspective, do you think it was important to really set out your approach for the NQTs you're working with?
Yeah, 100%. I think because clarity has to be there for them in order to trust what you're doing, and they have to understand that I know what I'm doing, if that makes sense, because I made sure they knew what coaching was, what mentoring was, that they understood the difference between live coaching, that I'm going to pop in every day practically to see them, but it's not necessary to catch them out. That's not what it's there for. It's to help and support them, to catch them doing the good things, but that I am going to challenge them, that it's not easy being an NQT, but I am going to challenge you because I want you to be the best version of yourself, and live coach is going to get you there, and that's what's going to happen. That you are going to be part of what a 3-week intensive coaching program is, where I'm going to come in, you're going to come over to Whitmore and see me teach as well, or you're going to go and see. So we've had other NQTs go to other schools. They've gone to Whitchurch to see Willow's teaching as well. They've gone on learning walks. They've gone to see other teachers teach as well. So it's not just about seeing myself teach, seeing other people teach as well. So it was really important that I explained to them how important coaching is and how that will actually shift them in their performance and shift them in their understanding, and the part that coaching will play. And it was important that they understood that. So yeah, for me, it was important that I did lay that out.
Yeah, and I think what I know from you and the way you work is that what I think is fantastic is the whole package that you are providing for the NQTs, and some of the things you've just mentioned there about giving them opportunities to visit other schools and to see other people teach. All of the things you're offering them are important, aren't they? It's like a jigsaw. All of those bits then come together to provide a really strong package of support for the NQTs. So yeah, it's been really lovely to hear about both your role as a mentor, Amy, but also your experience of it as an NQT, Ben. So thank you both so much for joining me this afternoon. I know other mentors and other NQTs will be really interested to hear what you've spoken about, and really good luck for the rest of your NQT process, Ben.
Thank you very much.
I hope you have a really long and successful career in teaching, and Amy, keep doing what you're doing. It's great to hear about fantastic mentors that we've got in the region. So thank you both. Diolch.
Diolch am wrando ar y benod hon o Sgwrs. Cofiwch ein dilyn ar Twitter a Facebook, tanysgrifio ein sianel YouTube, ymuno yn cymunedau ar ein gwefan a darllen ein bwletin ysgolion wythnosol am y newyddion diweddaraf. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sgwrs. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our online communities via our website, and read our weekly school bulletin for the latest news. Hwyl am y tro. Bye for now.